on your, well, you know where the bathrooms are as you walk in. And I think rather than confining yourself to feeling like you have to use that courtroom for this, that you've got better spaces for this, this boardroom. So rather than jump into it, there's no rush. There's never been a rush to give you new digs. The 150th anniversary is going to come and go in one day. But we have to think of planning for the people, for you. There's even a back door by the conference room. There's a back door where the supervisors that choose to can come up the stairways into the back door, up to the second floor. It's really not a second floor, but it is. But it's just a much more practical look at converting to a new boardroom for you. So I just caution you to wait until this task force gets going and can make some really practical and logistical suggestions for you. And not just look at a boardroom, but look at the entire building and the spaces that are available there. So this doesn't have to be decided today. There are a lot of options, and it's a brighter room too. It's got lots of windows. It's a really nice room, tall ceilings, and it really kind of more fits what you need or what the public needs than what you're trying to do to an old courtroom with acoustical problems and too many problems.
Thank you for the comments. I would suggest, Richard, if you could maybe take Ms. Spencer's comments and maybe give a little bit of a summarization back to us for next week to look at the validity or not validity, and then I would like to see if Jeff and maybe you could also, you know, Eileen said you guys have had some.
We just talked.
Okay, maybe just give a brief little feedback on that, but me personally, I don't want to put the brakes on everything while I think we could stay on course and still get some feedback on this. Thank you.
Do I understand correctly, we're talking about this area here? The whole,
Yeah, upstairs.
Yeah, I think she said that's what the auditor.
So it would displace the auditor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We're not putting her out in the
How many,
street.
how many square feet is that?
That's the same, close to the same square footage as downstairs when you take all the.
That's 23 feet?
When you take the building, the auditor occupies this side up on the upper floor. If you have all this space down here, you could renovate this, move the auditor there, and then renovate that. I mean, that's what Ms. Spencer's suggesting.
It's
This is
basically an
about-
empty building. I mean,
This is about 1,200 square feet here, 40 by 30.
Okay. So if that would, if the board would be okay with that, I would suggest that we have Jeff make the changes on our option 5 that we've discussed, but at the same time just give a bit of
Yeah,
feedback.
it's an interesting concept, and the reason why it probably wasn't given consideration before is because the auditor kind of likes
Yeah.
the space that she had when she was in the clean courthouse there, in the space that the county clerk occupied for the biggest part now, and she gave up being in the courthouse and moved over when this became available in the mid-90s after the library vacated it. So, obviously, the auditor has an interest in this issue too. And
Right, exactly. That's what.
But ultimately, we can determine who gets what. So if it's a space that the board deems is more appropriate for the board than the auditor, I guess, has to live with the consequences.
That's why I'm just saying exactly, we need to get some feedback. It's a valid suggestion, we'll get some feedback, and then, go from there. Richard?
I was just going to suggest, I'd like to be able to bring that back next week, but that means getting it done tomorrow and Thursday. One of the issues that comes to mind to me immediately is the the technology issues that might take us a little bit longer to research it. We kind of need to know where the auditor would go in order to know what it would take to accommodate financial system, property tax system, et cetera, in moving, and I think that's all
Well,
part of it.
you've got the renovation cost here, which probably for what the board is needing and using is relatively minimal, but then if the auditor goes in this space, okay, the renovation expense of that for the auditor to be able to relocate would have to be considered part of the equation. So, you know, that changes the dollar amount.
I think the beauty of having it on Root Street is that all of the county admins are there. They can run, instead of all over the place, they can run, they don't have to drive, they can run to their offices, you can run to your offices. Everything's self-contained. And that's the beauty of having it on the Root Street side, is that, you know, you guys are already there. And there's no cost of outfitting you in a new place. It's just, it's very practical, it's convenient, and I don't see why you should spend more money on something you're not going to use when you could use it on something that's been finalized by the task force, that when they bring you where they're moving everybody, then you can finalize it. But to spend money, to have Jeff just keep coming back with these drawings, it just, it's not a good way to spend money. I mean, I'm sorry, but you're gonna get paid anyway.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
What I'd like to say is,
Just state your name.
oh, James Hodge. One is kind of getting back to what are priorities. You know, we still don't have a priority list yet, and to me, going ahead with this full speed is not a good idea. That we really should have a priority thing in place. I don't see the crisis myself. Another possibility is, has anybody investigated the idea of using the city council chambers? This is a board that meets rarely. I mean, you're only here a couple of days a month. They're not there that often. It's a bigger space than this. Why not go over there? Why not share that space? Maybe spend a few dollars to spiff up the media center or whatever, but that would be far less money than spending, you know, $250,000, $300,000 to renovate this other space. I have a hunch that if we did a survey up and down the county and asked people, took a wide variety of people, young people, old people, middle-aged people, young families, etc., and asked them, what are your priorities for the county? I bet a new board of supervisors digs would not be very high on the list. Not very high at all. You know, this sort of is to me what psychologists call self-justification bias. You kind of came up with an idea, and now you're trying to come up with a million reasons why you really ought to do it. That's sort of like a guy that says, honey, I saw a new truck at the lot today. And she's like, oh, what? We already have a truck. It runs fine. We're going to have no repair bills. He says, yeah, but it's red. It's got great wheels and it's got 4 doors. It'll be easy for the kids. It gets a little bit of gas mileage. You know, he's going to come up with a lot of reasons for it or why he should do it. And I'm not sure if we have that. In reality, if we have that here, maybe in your minds, that would be a really nice thing. But for the county of Lassen, I don't know. I would put this pretty far down the list, and I'd for sure check out the idea of using city council chambers as another alternative idea. And there's probably a lot of other ideas that people haven't thought of yet. Even things like going to various parts of the county and holding meetings, sometimes in South County, sometimes in North County, using a church or some other place. I mean, all you need is really is a place where people can gather and voice their opinions, and where you could be sharing your opinions.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks.
Right. I'd just like to comment a little bit about that. Yeah, this chambers is used a lot more than 2 or 3 times a week. There's other committees that meet here, and I believe at times there's stuff going on here and maybe other stuff going on. We do use city county chambers for air board and the JPA for the pool and whatnot. And I agree. The man on the street probably thinks, I mean, this is nowhere on his radar. The man on the street probably, if you asked them what day of the week the board met on, probably hasn't a clue. But the fact of the matter is, you know, a county needs to have a proper, you know, place to conduct business where people could fit, where people could see the media. I mean, it's just part of the cost of doing business in my mind. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to have spend gazillions of dollars and, you know, fancy it up, but I'm of the opinion that this room is inadequate to professionally, you know, serve the people a lot of times on a lot of agendas. And we're not gonna be here forever and ever and ever, so I think it's just, you know, something that we do need to look into, and that's what we're doing, is looking into it. We're not breaking ground, we haven't signed any contract, we're doing feasibility, if you will, coming up with a plan, and then we're gonna get some costs, we're gonna look at our capital improvement, look at what we need to do, and then go forward. So I think it's a bit premature for, you know, criticism. Comment and bringing up some points is good, but like I said, we're at the infant stages of this, is how I see it.
My point is just to make sure that we are identifying all the possible alternatives. With reference to the other groups that you talk about that meet here, mostly what they need is a space, right? Does it really have to be this room, or could it be another space? If there was a convenient space to use,
Yeah. Well,
okay? And answer this question for me. Is the county really flush with money?
whether the county, that question, I mean, again, that's what happens on these agenda items. We're talking right now about plans and all that. I mean, those are, no matter what we try to do, whether it's a pool, you say, talk to the man on the street, everybody wanted a pool. Then we go and we go forward to build the pool. And then the same people come in and say, well, why are you building a pool? The county doesn't have money. I mean, like I said, Jim, with all due respect, we're looking at some plans for some options on some vacant, county-owned real estate at this time. It's nothing more, and it's nothing less. We're gonna get some costs, and then we'll move forward in a responsible manner. So that's all I have to say on that. So.
If I could comment, I think Mr. Hodge raises a couple very valid questions, and I think they deserve to be answered, and I think the answers are clearly there. I realize there'll be differences of opinion in terms of what's priority. I guarantee you, Mr. Hodge's priorities and my priorities are worlds apart. But, and to answer the question in terms of the money, I think this county has operated in a very frugal fashion for maybe way too many years for some people's minds, but maybe not enough for other people's minds. We're debt-free, we have managed our resources, we have significant reserves, and we have unallocated funds that are available to us. So from a cost perspective, how we utilize those funds, you know, I think is a matter of public discourse, and I think the public needs to be a part of that discussion. But to distort the discussion by, you know, playing trump cards, because you read in the newspapers a lot, in other media, about counties that haven't managed their resources and they're broke and they have unfunded liabilities and they're declaring bankruptcy and stuff like that. And I'd like to say that the management of this county and the leaders of this county over the recent 20 or 30 years, you know, have done a far greater job in taking care of the public's business than you will give them credit, and maybe some of your associates will give them credit, and that's part of the public discourse. And I take that criticism firsthand, okay? But you don't think we've done a good job, I'm going to tell you, I think we've done a great job, and we'll disagree on that. Now, as far as chambers, yeah, we could go over and camp in the city, and I think the city would make it available to us whenever we, and they have in the past, whenever we've had a need to, and we utilize their chambers. They've actually come over and they've utilized our chambers when they were in the process of rebuilding City Hall, well, about 6, 8, or 10 years ago, when they spent like $2 million. It was started out to be a $1 million renovation project. It wound up costing them $2 million. They're still paying off the debt. They're when you take all their debt with gas and water and remodeling City Hall and you name it, water tanks, the like, they're $40 to $50 million in debt. We're not, but they used our chambers, and we were more than happy to give them that, and we do that. But you know what, I see a lot of issues. Right now, we got a fairly small group of us, and we fit comfortably in this room, and I would say we have a lot of boring business that most people really don't care an iota to sit through. And if you have public access channels where you've live streamed the proceedings, you know, you have to be, you know, kind of sick, I guess, to watch that on an hourly basis. I know when I travel and my wife gets annoyed at me when I flip through the channels in the hotel and I come across the city council, a bishop or whoever it is, and they're having their proceedings. Oh wow, let's watch this. This ought to be cool. Let's see how they do it. And you know, you could probably watch cracks in the sidewalk dry after a rainstorm and be just as entertaining. And that's probably true for most people. So when you take a survey on the street, to be honest with you, it's not a question of what the priority is. You know, if they had their druthers, government would be gone altogether. I mean, so it would be true no matter whose priorities are being put forth for most people. But there are times, though, we do have significant public discussions that take place. You know, you put medical marijuana on the agenda, and I guarantee you, there not only is this room full, but the hallways are full. We have, you know, camped out in front. Everybody wants to weigh in on both sides. I mean, it's not one side or the other. And we wind up adjourning and going to places like the Veterans Hall and Monsignor Moran Hall, Jensen Hall, places like that, because we try to accommodate, you know, a much bigger crowd. And this room, when they moved in here 27 years ago, I was kind of appalled at the fact the county did that, because the board gave up a seating capacity that was double this for the public, as well as having room for staff to function. This is a much smaller room. And I got to tell you, every time we have one of those big meetings where we have the overflow crowd, you know, I would say if you took a poll that day of what would be the priority, they would say, why can't you have bigger accommodations? And more importantly, I was listening to a couple of people this morning convincing about the comfort of the chairs that you're sitting in. I mean, those chairs have been in use since, you know, the early, mid-1960s is how I've been able to date them. I'm waiting for Mark Totten to verify for me. They definitely were, you know, they were used in place in the mid-70s. So we've gotten a lot of value out of the investments that we've had in terms of equipment and so forth. I mean, we aren't living in a lap of luxury. So I think after 27 years in this particular facility, I think developing a new facility that is bigger and has the ability to accommodate the public a lot more conveniently than we are doing now, I think is a worthwhile objective, whether it's respected by the people on the street or not. And I think the board has an obligation to try to provide for that accommodation. This room is not audio, and I mean, we've got people talking about where's the speakers. These aren't, you know, magnifying sound out there with speakers. These are designed for recording. They're, you know, and that's the problem. In terms of the audio visual, we're probably the only boardroom in the state that uses an overhead projector that is like 1960s or 1970s technology. These, you know, having the projections like this little thing here, but mounted in the ceiling, and having the ability to wire in, and having that advantage when you travel and see other facilities for having public meetings, having your projection for whiteboards and projection screens and stuff. We're really in the dark ages here, having the ability to videotape the meeting. I mean, we rely upon citizens to do it rather than doing it like most every other place to do it, live streaming it, making it available on the internet. Those are the kind of things that we need to start looking at incorporating in our facilities. And I think that's what this discussion is about. So, I mean, yeah, we could sit here and continue to conduct business here, and we can probably save a lot more money too. I think there are a lot of other needs in the community that could be addressed and should be addressed in terms of priorities. We've talked about them at budget time. We do have a capital improvement plan, or at least a guideline of what one has been in existence. Our budgetary process takes into consideration, you know, the nearly $5 million worth of deferred maintenance that exists on the rolls that we know of the facilities we have, and those are given consideration. The priorities are not set in a vacuum outside of it. It's part of the budget. You can talk about it all you want, but unless it's in the budget, it's not going to get done. That's the controlling document. And so I think the discussion you talk about, I think is very important. But, we had that discussion last September, we had that discussion last July, we've had that discussion going back, the budget time period is very clear. We do mid-year budget reviews in January. I mean, it's, the laws are set up as to what that time frame is. And that's where I think those discussions, have taken place. So to suggest that no, they aren't, I disagree with you. We've had those discussions, and a lot of times nobody's in the room because it's like boring. It's like watching paint dry. But, that's what government's about, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're part of the discussion, and let's keep moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Just referring to Jim too, a little different, I have a little different outlook than Jim. There's this Jim. Budget-wise, short-term, I'm not worried about, spending the money for this new board chambers. It's not a high priority with me, kind of 6 of one, half dozen the other. If it was something, hanging out there we didn't have any money for, it was more important, or as important, I could easily be persuaded not to support the money for the boardroom. It's one-time money. It's not like, every year we're setting up a ongoing budget issue. It's one-time money, and there's several budget categories where there is money that's not being used. It's sitting there kind of like a savings account, if you want to look at it like that we can draw from for, one-time, short-term money. On the long term, I'm concerned. I think we are looking at some severe budget issues in the long term. And that's why I voted against the last county budget, which included $200,000 a year for the swimming pool. That's 15-year commitment. That bothers me. I do worry about it. Short term, 1 year, costs, I'm not that concerned about it. We do have some extra money sitting around we can use. I think it's important that we keep updating, and I agree with what Jim's saying as far as, there's been a lot of time before I was a supervisor, I stood out on that sidewalk, and you see it today, and that's when you have the issue, when you got people standing out there in the front on the sidewalk, and they can't hear, they can't come in, they get irritated, and then people are going to disagree with you. Not a big, large amount of the population do that, because most people don't come, but if you talk to them people, they're going to say, get a boardroom that the public can sit in, that the public can come there and watch. You guys, you don't even encourage people to come because they can't even fit in your room. I've been told that several times. People don't come for that reason. They come to the door and all the seats are taken, and maybe there's 1 or 2 there, so they leave. So, and I've been, it's been said that we're building, I don't know if you remember who wrote the letter now, who was you or who it was, but we're building a Taj Mahal for us. In my mind, we got all we need right here. I got a chair to sit in, I got a desk in front of me, I'm fine. It's not for us, it's for the people. My whole idea on this whole process has not been we were doing something for us. My thinking and what I thought we were going with, we're doing something for the people, so we got room for people to come in and sit and discuss these issues. If we don't, a lot of people don't come. They stand out in the hall once and help you guys. So I mean, Jim, maybe I got off led or mistracked, but I thought that was the whole idea of this room, for the people. We don't need it. I'm perfectly happy right here. And in a couple of years, I'm not going to be here anyhow. At the end of this term, I'm done. My shelf life, as somebody put this morning, is ended at the end of this term. So it's not a big deal to me, Jim.
Okay, I think you guys are taking my spin here a little bit off. First of all, I want to say I appreciate all of